Hey everyone, welcome to Bruin Dash, the UCLA show on Dash Sports TV. Uh, my name is Sam Connon. I am joined again by Jack Perez. Jack, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Sam. It's blistering hot here in Westwood. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's not too bad out here in Massachusetts, but I'll be experiencing that Los Angeles heat in a little bit. But let's get to the topics today. We'll be talking a lot about Pac-12, UCLA football. Uh, Obviously, no season, but still a lot of news to go around, a lot to discuss. First up on the slate is it's looking like the ACC, SEC, Big 12 will be playing their fall seasons as of now, but Pac-12 and Big 10 will not be. So there's definitely a lot up in the air, a lot of seismic shifts that could be happening. So, Jack, what do you think the impact will be on the college football landscape with no Pac-12 this season, this fall at least?
I think that the Pac-12 will come out of this looking like geniuses. They've they've won the battle with the Big Ten for coming out looking like the smart people when they're trying to cancel a season because the Big Ten has had a lot of problems with that. And we will see the ACC, SEC, and Big 12 all combust at some point. We already have reports out of Notre Dame, North Carolina, Vanderbilt that they're having to shut down their practices because they've been having COVID cases. Not, I don't even know if it's within their teams, but definitely within their school communities. And you think that they can last all season like this? No way, shape, or form. Pac-12 is going to look great out of this.
See, I understand where you're coming from a health standpoint. Yeah, the Pac-12, Big Ten, they're probably in the right here. They're keeping people safe by not playing. I get it, but the thing is, I think the ACC and the SEC and the rest are going to play a lot of a season, even if it's not a full season. They'll get some games in, and they're really going to set themselves apart from the Pac-12. The Big Ten doesn't matter as much for them. They're more prestige. They're in the college football playoff, but the Pac-12 has been faltering for years, and they really need on the field success, and not being on the field at the same time as these powers like Clemson, Alabama, Auburn, that's really going to sting. And I get that it was the right choice for health and safety, but in the long term, these Pac-12 programs that are already like not falling apart, but definitely losing a lot of national reputation, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse.
No
And
way.
it's going to sting in recruiting. It's going to sting in non-conference scheduling. They're going to lose a lot of leverage, and it's just going to be a mess moving forward.
I completely disagree. I think this is great for the Pac-12, especially if we do play spring football. Our guys are going to look good. We're not going to have to compete with the other conferences. The thing is, whenever we compete with the other conferences, we look a lot weaker. I mean, whether it's Pac-12 after dark, where no one on the East Coast stays up to watch, whether it's us going to the East Coast to go play against these teams, especially in the early weeks where we just get absolutely destroyed, the Pac-12 never looks good, and it really affects us in the college football rankings. Now we have a season where we are just playing against ourselves. We are showing recruits, hey, we care about your health, but we're still going to put out a good product in the spring when it's acceptable. If the ACC, SEC, Big 12, if they even miss 4 or 5 games, they're now behind the Pac-12 for this year. If it happens in November or December, there goes your championships. Oh, good job. You had half the season to have no championships. Whereas in the spring, at least you can put out a consistent product and look good without having to compete against the other conferences, either on TV or on the field.
But generally speaking, I don't think recruits are going to think like that. You look at the parents of the Big Ten who are going to the conference, the headquarters, and they're rioting and they're chanting, "Let us play, let them play." And there are a lot of recruits and players who think like that. And I don't know if they're really going to be excited by Pac-12 teams kicking the can.
That's different because the Big Ten had just flubbed everything out there. They're not telling us who voted what or like what the health experts are saying. The Pac-12 came out and said, health experts are telling us not to do it. We voted 12-0. We're against it. That's fine. That's completely different. At least they're giving reasons why. The Big Ten is a completely different reason. The recruits are going to see that this conference actually has their best interests.
But I think you take the case of UCLA. In a year with no coronavirus, they play their full 12-game schedule. If UCLA goes 8-4, that looks really good. That they'll go to a bowl and they get recruits. That's just kind of how it goes, especially when you're not a perennial powerhouse. Like, you need to succeed to get the recruits. But then even if UCLA goes, let's say they play an 8-game schedule in the winter and spring, if they go 5-3. Is that 5-3 really going to look that good? I mean, you're playing against all Pac-12 in a spring season when the SEC, ACC, Big 12 already played, and then it's probably going on at the same time as the NFL playoffs. You're not going to be getting the ratings you would in the fall. You're not going to be getting the recognition that you would in the fall. I just don't. I understand that was the decision made for health reasons and for financial reasons, but there are going to be ramifications, and it's going to hurt the reputation of the conference and the teams like UCLA who aren't those powers.
No, let's discuss it. They're not competing against the NFL in the fall. Thankfully, who are they competing against in the spring? Like, realistically, it's going to be regular season NBA at that point, maybe other college sports, but football is obviously the biggest one, other than maybe March Madness, but who knows when that will happen. And recruits will now get to see them actually play and not lose, because unlike you, I think UCLA is not going to have a winning season, and it looks bad every year when we go 3-9, 4-8. Recruits don't want to come play for a team that doesn't win and doesn't make bowl games. Now we have the chance to really step back, regroup the team, and try to put out a winning product for once. Try to put out a winning product for the first time in a couple of years.
So you think that it's a good thing for UCLA and their reputation in recruits just because they won't have a 3-9 season?
Yes, Sam, because we've had 3-9 seasons recently.
So even if they go out and they're 2-6 in the spring and winter, like, does that help any more than going 3-7 in the fall would? It's gonna sting no matter what. It's just part of it. It stinks. It really does. But it's just one of the ramifications of the decision they made to push to the spring, if they're even going to have a season at all.
All right. Well, let's go. We got a question in chat right here. How is it allowed for conferences to have these unplayed players played during pandemics? I mean, yeah, who knows why? Other than the fact that the players want to play. You can't force them to play. They can opt out, obviously, but these conferences can do whatever they want because no one's stopping them, because no one has the balls to stop them.
Yeah, see, they are unpaid. They don't get a salary. They have certain financial and economic restrictions that are borderline unconstitutional, but there are a lot of people working on that. At the same time, these guys do get scholarships. They get living stipends. They get housing stipends. They get food.
I mean, sometimes
it's not enough, but there is a transfer of goods and services and payment in one form or another that these players say they want to play, and the exchange is a scholarship. It's living costs, it's food. Sometimes that's not enough. You can argue in the case of student athletes that they should be getting more, but they are getting something in exchange for their services, really.
Let me just say this. These conferences do not care about their players' health. They don't at all. There are reports that they're still going to let in 20 to 25% of their stadium's capacities come. They're going to fill those up with fans. If you do that, you don't care about your students. You don't care about your athletes at all. You just want the money. That's all it is for them. It's the money.
Well, yes, absolutely. But I mean, the fan to player transmission is not the issue. The issue is fan to fan transmission when it comes to allowing people into stadiums.
But that's your community. Those are usually people that live in your community. And if your players, which they're not bubbling them, they can't bubble them. David Shaw from Stanford said that there's no way that they can bubble these communities. And that was just for the Pac-12. You're telling me the SEC, ACC, Big 12 are going to do that? No way. These fans live in those communities. And if those communities continue to have spikes, those players are going to get infected.
Yeah, that's fair. I get it. But I mean, is this unexpected? Not really. I mean, you look at the schools that are pushing for it. It's not Stanford, Cal, USC, UCLA. It's not Northwestern and Michigan. It's Alabama and Auburn. And these are big schools that do have some academics that are good every now and then, but the reputation isn't really there. The values definitely lean more towards athletics. I understand why they're making the decision they are. Not justifying it, but I'm not surprised. I
mean, you still see schools like Duke are playing out there, and they have a great academic reputation. There's obviously no one there that's stopping all the other schools. I don't know. The Ivy League was the first one to shut everything down, and those are the most prestigious academic schools in the nation. I don't know.
Well, I think going back to your point of all about the money, I wouldn't necessarily say the Ivy League decided to push their season to the spring because they care about their athletes more than the Pac-12 does. I just don't think that the Ivy League makes enough money on football to justify it. The ACC, SEC, they not to justify the risk, but in their minds, it does. So we'll move on from that. We'll go on to recruiting for UCLA football. The 2021 class, which is over a year away from showing up on campus, was looking pretty thin in March at the start of the pandemic. But then all of a sudden, right as quarantine was starting, March, April, May, there was a slew of recruits who came in. They committed to UCLA without visits for most of them, or had previously come to camps. They had almost, I think, 9 recruits who are coming in. So Jack, I don't know. Do you think that this 2021 class can kind of get things on track for Chip Kelly, considering it's a lot of local talent that he brought him in himself?
Listen, I'll say this. I'm not the biggest Chip fan right now, and I'm not sure about his availability after this year, but they have done a great job for recruiting on this class. You know, you're going to lose DTR by this point, almost for sure. And they brought in a lot of offensive weapons. I'm excited for this. They got a lot of wide receivers that can go deep. They've got a good running back from Alabama. They got a quarterback in there. They've got a couple athletes that are looking long. I think this team could finally bring us back. I mean, whether this year or next year even happens or how we do is up for debate. But this group right here is looking solid. I've never seen a group look this good from UCLA this far out. Yes, it's only ranked 7th in the Pac-12, but I think that might be due to kind of a low number. And these guys might not have a senior year to play for some of them, especially the ones that are local in California. But this group was looking supreme.
Yeah, I think the cream of the crop really is Devin Kirkwood, who's an athlete. He's the only 4-star in the class. You would like to think that UCLA can get 5 stars, but in the Chip Kelly era, that's not the case. The best he's been able to get is 4 stars, and not too many of them. So it's like Devin Kirkwood will be one of the best players in this class, and he might be undervalued at a 4-star, by the way. He is a really, really good defensive prospect. He plays corner, he plays safety, he can play slot, he can play outside. He's really dynamic, and he's got the size too. For a defensive back coming out of high school at 6'3", I mean, he's really going to be a tool in the defense. I would be willing to bet that even if Chip Kelly is here come the 2021 season, that there will be a change on the defensive coordinator side. I don't think it'll be Jerry Azzanaro. We'll see if there's a change in the staff there, but whoever it is, we'll be happy to have Devin Kirkwood. He's not the star that Darnay Holmes was coming out of high school, but at the same time, he could be a real game changer, 3-4 year guy who can really be an anchor to your secondary. And UCLA needs that. Their pass defense has been atrocious for years.
Listen, we don't need 5 stars across the board. It's unrealistic for us, especially competing against USC in our own backyard, against Stanford, Cal, Oregon's coming in a lot. The Arizonas are right next door. But Chip Kelly has proven in the past, not necessarily at UCLA yet, but in the past that he can do a lot with 3- and 4-star guys. And if he recruits a lot of them, there's always going to be a couple sleepers in there. I'll tell you who I'm real excited for, though, is Benjamin Roy, the center out of Nevada. We need a good offensive line. We need an athletic offensive line, especially for the offense that Chip Kelly wants to run. Now, if something changes, like I think it will by that time, maybe a new head coach won't be able to use them quite as well. But this dude looks solid in the center. Even if he moves out to one of the guard positions, I think this was a great, great pickup from Chip Kelly.
Yeah, see, I know I was just shouting the praises for Devin Kirkwood on the defensive side, but I will say, on the offensive side of the ball, I'm not sure what this 2021 class is going to do because, like you said, DTR will either be in his senior year or he'll be gone. We'll see if he opts out or goes to the draft, whatever it is. There's not a quarterback in there, which is a concern. There is a quarterback, but 3-star. Yeah, there's one quarterback who's a 3-star. The idea should be that you get DTR's heir apparent. Not that Dorian is a world breaker or anything, but he's a good, solid starting QB in the Pac-12. You need a succession plan. And any of the guys on the roster right now, You have a lot of guys who are good in high school or transferred. You got some names there, but I don't think anyone on the roster or anyone in this 2021 class can really take on a full starting job for UCLA. So I know they're looking at guys, but that's definitely the biggest hole for me. You can surround whoever it is with a bunch of gadget guys and interchangeable pieces, like you were saying, like Chip Kelly does. But at Oregon, it was Marcus Mariota. Here in the past 2 years, it's been Dorian Thompson-Robinson. You need an anchor to that offense, and I think they're desperate for that.
I disagree, man. You look at some of these Alabama offenses before, you had Tua come in, before a couple of those guys, but they didn't have world breakers at quarterbacks. They just had game managers. I don't know if there's anyone on this roster right now that is at the level of Dorian Thompson-Robinson or in our recruiting classes. Actually, I know there's not. There's not a single guy that's at that level right now. But if Chip Kelly just puts a lot of weapons around them, that guy will succeed. You don't have to be a world breaker in college football, especially in the Pac-12. We've seen guys that are unheralded come into these teams and lead them to success. You don't have to have a DTR, a Josh Rosen, a Brett Hundley every single year. Just have a guy that's solid, doesn't commit a bunch of turnovers, and leads his team when he knows to lead them.
And see, at that point, you're crossing your fingers, though. You can, every once in a while in college football, you get a walk-on, you get a Baker Mayfield. It happens. You're right. But you look at Alabama, and you're talking about these game managers. What is it? AJ McCarron is probably like the classic go-to, like, oh, that Alabama game manager didn't do much in the NFL. Well, guess what? He was top 100 recruit. He was a top 10 pro-style QB. He only looks like game manager because that's Alabama's system. You need talented guys. And, you don't need 5 stars, but it certainly helps your chances the more talent you have. So I'm happy that UCLA has these 12 commits. They didn't have any back at the beginning of March, and they have 12 now. That's really good for the state of the program. It shows that people don't even need to visit, and they're still happy to commit. But you need the anchor of your offense. You need the anchor of the recruiting class, and I still think they're missing out on that for now.
Let me just say, I don't think that recruits need to visit here. We live in Westwood. Westwood's amazing. It's a great place to come live. You have lots of history here at UCLA. Obviously, you have the rivalries with USC, Cal. There's things that you can sell besides being on campus, besides watching them play. I think this is a great class. This is just a good group of guys. You don't need world breakers every single year. Alabama can afford to have an AJ McCarron because they have everyone around them. But why can't UCLA do the same thing? Yeah, I know we're not at that level right now, but we can get there.
Yeah, see, I think the guy they really need to go after, and to Chip Kelly's credit, he has been apparently, is Deacon Hill. He's from Santa Barbara. His 3 older sisters all went to UCLA and played women's water polo. But he's a 6'3" pro-style quarterback. He's a top 20 pro-style in the country. Committed to Wisconsin for now, but UCLA is making a late push. He's the kind of guy, he's been compared to Ben Roethlisberger. So even if he is a 3-star, you can tell he has the tools. So you don't need a guy who threw for 60 touchdowns in senior year of high school, but you need someone with tools. And I think Deacon Hill can be that. And I think he could come in, maybe not a starter his freshman year, but he would have the best raw talent on UCLA at the quarterback position.
Let me say this about Deacon Hill. This dude needs to come to UCLA. How can you not come to the same school that your 3 older sisters were All-Americans at? That's ridiculous. Going to Wisconsin, where you're going to hand the ball off 45 times a game to some star running back, your name's not going to get known, dude. Come to UCLA. Chip Kelly will use you like a freaking man.
Yeah, I think all parties would end up for the better if that happens, but we'll have to wait until this fall, this winter, see what he ends up deciding.
There's no way he comes to UCLA, unfortunately. If you look at his Twitter, it's Wisconsin. But have you been to Wisconsin, Deacon? If you've been to Wisconsin in the winter, it's freezing cold. Do you want to live there or do you want to live in LA?
Well, I guess we'll find out. I wouldn't blame him if he goes and plays for a winning program. That's fine. Getting to play in the Big Ten championship every year is kind of nice. So I would give him that. Moving on
Sounds
to our
good,
final
man. Sounds
topic of
good.
the day. There isn't going to be a fall season, which means there's a lot of players, almost 100 players, who are going to kind of be all over the place this fall. They're not really going to have their weekends like they usually do. They're not going to be playing those games on Saturday. They're not going to be traveling. Practice will be lighter, if any, depending on where things go. So there's going to be a lot of wiggle room for these guys in their personal lives and their professional lives too. So, Jack, what do you think these players should be looking to do outside of football this fall? And what have you seen from some of them so far?
UCLA has a great alumni connection group. You've got to find an opportunity outside of football, especially if stuff happens. We play during the spring. The NFL doesn't change any of their things up. This may affect UCLA guys going into the NFL draft. They may not get the opportunity to shine like some of these ACC, SEC guys will in the fall, so they might be overlooked for a year. Really just look for internship opportunities out here in LA. There's a million things that are going to be opening up, especially once the pandemic is over, once everything all the restrictions lift. I think they should really be trying to look into Hollywood type things. You're living a few miles away from there. Why not go into production? Some of these guys are big dudes. They always need big dudes out there to play roles. There's only so many people in the world that are 6'5", 6'6", 250 plus pounds. Go out there and try to act a little bit. Why not? What's the worst that could happen?
I don't know. It's a bummer. There's no more Game of Thrones. I feel like some of them could get roles on that. But yeah, I mean, like you said, there's a lot of them going for internships, which is kind of interesting. You wouldn't really think of that because there's always an off season and there's a lot of practice going on. But there are times when these guys are away from the field for periods of time. But this is obviously different. You look at Bo Calvert, who's looking for internships. Then you have Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who's trying to build himself a personal media brand, whether it's with T-shirts, whether it's his like "Don't Be a Fan Later," his vlogs. So maybe not getting a job in Hollywood, but there are a lot of guys out here trying to build their image in this extended off season.
I mean, did you see his vlog from his first vlog from his last week? Pretty well done, Dorian. I will applaud you on that one. That was a good effort. That was really good out there. I mean, it is tough to do vlogs. I don't know if you've ever tried to shoot one or edit one or film one. I haven't personally.
I was about to ask.
I've seen it happen though. I've seen it happen in the Daily Bruin offices. Some of them are vlogs, but some of them are just regular videos. That stuff is tough, man. That is hours upon hours of going through footage, cutting out all the bad stuff, reworking the good stuff to look even better. That's not easy out there.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I watched it too. Not the biggest fan. I'm just going to say it. Dorian, he's going to be a really good quarterback once UCLA gets back on the field, but not my favorite.
Dorian,
I'll say that. I mean, you're talking about how hard it is to edit and get out the bad stuff. There's a lot of downtime in that first episode there. We'll have to see how he fixes that moving forward, because I think that he's got a great personality and he's got a great team around him that can really help moving forward. But I mean, it's a learning process. I get it. Everyone's experimenting outside of football, including him and his editors and everyone he's working with. So it'll get better.
This dude is so charismatic. He just needs to show it through. I know he can't make revenue through it because YouTube has been strict, or not YouTube has been strict. The NCAA has been strict on YouTube guys in the past that are also college football players. You had that kicker from Florida, not Florida University, somewhere in Florida a couple years ago who got in a big fight over it. So he can't monetize it. 10 minutes and 1 second. That's the perfect length for a YouTube video, Dorian. 10 minutes and 1 second. That, if you're allowed to get ads, usually allows you to put 2 ads on there. But that's also about the same amount of time that someone is willing to spend sitting on their couch, sitting on their bed, watching a singular video without getting bored. And also about the same amount of time that within a day is really interesting to outside people. 20 minutes, you're really starting to push in it. Anything over that is a no. You should be cutting that entirely. His video was 17 minutes. With some of the stuff you could cut out, speed up, especially the driving parts. There's a fast forward button. It makes it a little interesting. Put some good music behind there. this dude's got a good vlog. I mean, he's got a fan base already within UCLA athletics, with everyone on Twitter that has a UCLA football fan account. You've got an immediate base. That's great. Grow from that. Look at Pittman from USC. He had a vlog these past couple of years. They did great, and they were so well done. Try to emulate that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think this fall, like you're bringing up the monetization. It's going to be really interesting because a lot of these guys are going to be looking for internships and jobs and building their brands, media, all over the place. But none of them can get paid, which is a total mess. And it's probably going to blow up in some weird way no one expects. Someone's going to get an unpaid internship and they're going to go to bat and whatever it is. But I mean, in January, hopefully you have the name, image, likeness thing coming in that will change things up a little bit for the sake of these athletes and just for the sake of fans who are sick of all these NCAA regulations. But for the time being, it's going to be really messy. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with it. I mean, you had Theo Howard, who transferred to Oklahoma. Lucky for him, he gets to play, supposedly. But he was saying to all the Pac-12 guys all his old teammates who had their seasons canceled, to take this time to find out what you're really good at. And I think a lot of these guys are. Like Bo Calvert really wants something in finance, or Chase Griffin really wants to be an advocate for student athletes and be an ambassador. That's great. But at the same time, if people finding out what they're good at usually is turning into a job, how are they going to make money off of that?
Hold on one second.
But they can't do that.
My producer's telling me right now that the NCAA still not allowing players to get paid is criminal, which I agree with. Can't believe that this is still happening in this day and age. I think the biggest problem, though, and this is a UCLA-specific, Pac-12-specific problem right now, is what do they do with players? You're not really compensating them that much. I mean, sure, you get free schooling, which is awesome. We're doing all online schooling now. UCLA has announced that it's basically everything is online schooling, but they're not feeding them. They're probably not providing housing for all of them right now if they're not practicing on campus with teams. A lot of them are still living at home with their parents. So why can't they be paid now? What's the problem with that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but you saw what happened with the We Are United, Let Us Play, all that. It happened to be right when the Pac-12 and Big Ten shut their seasons down. Maybe it's a coincidence, maybe it's not, but I don't think they're going to budge anytime soon. Name, image, likeness, on the other hand, is kind of being forced on by state governments, the federal government. Even the NCAA now is trying to find a way to make that work. But when it comes to actually paying players, that's just not going to happen, especially in the short term. And you just have to look at how schools and the NCAA responded to all those movements from a few weeks ago. And honestly, they kind of fizzled out a little bit and morphed into the Justin Fields of the world saying, we want to play. These athletes, I don't want to speak for all of them, but a lot of them would rather play in the current climate of the NCAA than fight for change and play and risk something and play in a new NCAA. A lot of them would be happy to go to bat for themselves and other student athletes and do that fight. But a lot of them would rather just say, hey, I only have 3 years eligibility left. This is a battle that's beyond me. I want to get out there on the field, show NFL teams what I'm worth. Or some of them just want that scholarship. It's fine. There's a lot of different people, a lot of different athletes who are going at this in a lot of different ways. And this fall, it could be messy. It could be great for them. Maybe it will create some unwanted problems. But
let me just say one last thing here. They won't ever be able to unionize because it's such a big turnover. Every 4 or 5 years, you're basically out of there. But the players can unionize so easily and change this entire thing up. The NCAA has done an amazing job at blocking that, which isn't really a compliment to them.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at
that. That is it for the second episode of Bruin Dash, the UCLA show on Dash Sports TV. You can follow me at Sam Connon DB on Twitter. You can follow Jag at Jack Perez DB on Twitter. You can go to our website at dashsports.tv or follow at Dash Sports TV on Twitter. You can follow us on TikTok. So thanks again for watching and listening. We'll see what UCLA news there is in the coming weeks, but we will be here to talk about it. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.
Come to